afternoon. It's Wednesday, February 3rd. I'm Aria O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open with a terrorist attack outside the old city's Damascus gate this afternoon. 2 border police women were injured, one critically and one seriously, and another man suffered light injuries in an attack carried out by 3 terrorists armed with knives, Carl Gustav automatic rifles, and homemade pipe bombs. Security forces shot and killed the terrorist. According to an initial investigation, the terrorist aroused the suspicion of border police forces who asked them for their identity papers. While examining them, one of the terrorists pulled out his weapon and opened fire, shooting the 2 women, and another stabbed them. The 2 were transferred to Hadassah Hospital in Mount Scopus. Police sealed off the area and removed 2 explosive devices left by the terrorists at the site. The 3 terrorists are said to be from the Jenin area in the West Bank. The Hamas military wing Izzadin el-Qassam announced this morning that 2 of its fighters were killed when a tunnel they were digging in central Gaza collapsed last night. The group released footage of the incident. It is the second time in less than a week that Hamas fighters have been killed while tunneling. Last week, 7 Hamas operatives were killed and others injured when tunnel walls caved in. Recent statements by Hamas claiming the terror group has intensified its tunneling into Israel have left some residents living near the Gaza border concerned. Other residents believe the army will ensure their safety. IBA's Margaret Dudkevich traveled down south and met with residents living near the Gaza border.
Almost 18 months after Operation Protective Edge, residents living in communities close to the Gaza border are attempting to move forward, develop and flourish, but are unable to shake off fears of a terrorist infiltration. Moshav Netiva HaSarah is the closest Israeli community to Gaza. Only a few hundred meters separate the Moshav from the Palestinian town of Beit Lahia.
We're on the southern side of the Moshav right now, closest to Gaza as you could possibly get, since in the background you can see the separation wall between the Gaza Strip and Israel proper. The Moshav has grown and has prospered and has flourished. 3 incredible words when you consider how close we are to the enemy.
In Kibbutz Nachal Oz, residents are trying to move forward. In the past year, 17 new families came to the kibbutz, replacing 17 families who left following Operation Protective Edge.
This is a beautiful kibbutz with a great community that have some crisis, but we try not to give up about our place and our community and our families over here. So this is a good place.
Just across the border is Sajaiya, the Gaza neighborhood that was destroyed in the 2014 war.
We're in Sajaiya, which is a neighborhood at Gaza City, our neighbor. I can tell you that back in the 70s, 80s, they were actually our neighbors because we had great relationship and there was no trouble going back and forth for them and for us. But now most of the terror organization leaders set in this specific neighborhood, and it's become unpleasant neighborhood for us, I guess, for most of the residents there also.
Hamas says it has resumed its network of tunnels, boasting the number is higher than those discovered and destroyed by the army during the 2014 offensive. The reports have succeeded in fueling an already tense situation. The army insists that every complaint received is thoroughly investigated before it's ruled out. So far, no attacked tunnels have been detected inside Israel. Indeed, a number of areas along the border, the army is deploying classified technological systems to identify tunnels.
Undoubtedly, there is activity on the Gaza side, and Mr. Khania has told us that he is tunneling towards Israel. So you must believe the man. After all, he's such a fine, upstanding member of the Gazan community. The wall that you see in front of us over here at one stage had machinery placed in front of it, which obviously were digging machines to detect any activity on our side. And obviously, we won't get the results of those tests, but proof will have it that nothing has popped up on this side of the border yet.
The army's operations do little to alleviate the fears of Susie and her friend Slil, who live in Moshav Prigan, some 2 kilometers from the Gaza border fence. Just a week ago, Slil woke up in the middle of the night to feed her child when she heard drilling noises beneath her trailer home. She immediately called the head of security and her brothers. Since she refuses to return to her home, her friend Susie is also worried.
So our feeling is that we're being attacked by 3 dimensions: by the air, by the land, we're being penetrated, and by underground. So it's a nightmare. We're living in a nightmare, actually.
You watch the grounds a lot, you start to be aware for a lot of voices and to start to understand any voices where it came from. But this voice was strange, was like someone literally digging under my feet. It's crazy.
Prime Minister Netanyahu warned Hamas not to test Israel, saying Israel's defensive and offensive capabilities are developing rapidly. Knesset member Bar-Lev says if tunnels have entered Israel's territory, Israel must act.
I can't say whether or not they succeeded to cross the border to Israel, but if they succeeded, this is a breakdown of Israel's jurisdiction. And I think from a moral point of view and from a security point of view, this gives Israel the full right to do something about it.
The situation leaves residents living near the Gaza border caught in a tug of war between efforts by the Defense Ministry to calm the situation and some politicians fanning the flames.
Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu said that if something will happen, then they will react. So I'm saying, like, what if that's my family, or that's our moshav, or that's our area? Does a family have to be wiped out for the IDF to do anything, to do something, to react?
Margot Dudkevich on the Gaza border for IBA News.
Petitions against the controversial government-approved gas deal were presented today at the High Court of Justice, where an extended panel of 5 justices. In an unusual move, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asked to testify as acting Minister of the Economy, but his request was turned down, and he was asked to first submit a declaration to the court. The Movement for the Equality Government in Israel, the Zionist Union, Labor and Meretz parties are appealing the gas deal to protest the government's intention to bypass antitrust regulations. Meretz leader Zahava Galon accused Netanyahu of fear-mongering. Zionist Union Shelley Yechimowicz said the Prime Minister was displaying strong-arm tactics and was coming to the court as a solicitor of big money. Widespread demonstrations against the gas outline have been taking place over the past months. Protesters are demanding an end to what they're calling gas robbery by tycoons. The Knesset Legislative Ministerial Committee today convened to discuss the recently approved 15 billion shekel aid package to Arab communities designed to improve the Israeli-Arab standard of living. Likud ministers Yariv Levin and Ze'ev Elkin, who were appointed to oversee the historic 5-year development plan, are slated to present their recommendations, which include enforcement of zoning and construction laws. Reports are circulating that the ministers will propose withholding slated funds from Arab local authorities who violate construction arrangements. A stormy debate last night as the Haifa Municipality Council convened to discuss the recently released interim report on how pollution levels affect children and infants in the northern town district of Haifa. Health Minister Yaakov Litzman, Environmental Protection Minister Avi Gabay, and Haifa Mayor Yona Yohav attended the meeting. The lead researcher of the study defended the findings, saying that although it cannot be confirmed that babies in the area are born with smaller head circumference in comparison to other infants born in different regions, the study clearly shows a growing number of children born smaller and underweight. Haifa Mayor Yona Yohav objected to what he called the premature revelation of the study, but vowed he would personally make sure that the research will be fully transparent once completed. That position was echoed by Litzman and Gabay, who said that once and if the conclusions will be verified, they will take the necessary steps to deal with the problem. Joining me now in the studio is Richard Hellman, president of the Christians Israeli Public Action Campaign and founder of Merkel, the Middle East Research Center, a Washington-based think tank. Thanks for joining us, Richard.
Thank you, Aryeh.
Well,
Great
Richard,
to be with you.
You have many hats you're wearing, and you've been a staunch supporter of the Jewish state and very active in combating anti-Israeli sentiment. How's that going now?
Well, it's always a tough struggle, and it seems like the enemies of Israel and adversaries of Israel proliferate, but as we say, greater is he that's with us than he that's with the world. And so we organize Americans at the grassroots, and they buttress my efforts on Capitol Hill. And you know, the Congress, and particularly the House, is so strongly pro-Israel. They constitute a firewall, but also a fountain of new ideas to increase and improve the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Well, tell us about your work confronting BDS.
Yes. Now it's about 2 years ago when I thought really anti-BDS provisions should be in the Trade Promotion Authority, the so-called Free Trade or Fast Track Authority for trade agreements with Europe and with Asia. And so that is what has happened. These provisions are in there, and so nations that want to trade with America are warned, in effect, against boycotting or having BDS provisions against Israel.
Now, how is your organization doing that? What do you mean by warning?
Well, I went up to and met with members of Congress, with House members particularly, who were working on anti-BDS measures, and I said, this should be in the U.S. trade legislation. And sure enough, very quickly I saw that happening, for which I was very thankful, and it just shows the depth of concern and commitment by the Congress, and I think particularly the House of Representatives, to oppose BDS provisions against Israel. So I think it was a great step forward.
Richard, what do you make of the recent remarks by the UN Chief Ban Ki-moon, who said that he criticized Israeli policies and almost legitimized the attacks against Israel, saying it was due to the despair and frustration by Palestinians?
They're totally unacceptable. I've worked with UN agencies from time to time over the years, but I was just ashamed and embarrassed that that high official of the United Nations would speak so unfairly, unjustly, and one-sidedly against Israel. Totally unacceptable.
You know, I understand that over 3 decades ago, you were commissioned by the Israeli government to draft Israel's environmental laws and plans. What do you make of the country's current environment status?
Well, Israel has made great progress. When I first came to Israel, I drove by the Hadera River, and it didn't smell so good, and I said, uh-oh, someone's not treating the sewage here. And then I went by the Nesher cement plant, and on my way from the airport to Jerusalem, I said, uh-oh, there's some pollution here. Now, obviously it's not perfect, but Israel has come to the forefront of nations that protect the environment of their citizens, the air, the water, the land, and what they've done for a long time without notice is protect all the living creatures, the plants and animals of the Bible, in short, since the foundation of the state. And so I think that Israel has made great progress. Obviously there's more to be done, but as we see, there's more to be done in America as well. But I'm happy to hold up Israel as one of the best nations in the world, and I was happy to be here with our group for Tu B'Shvat to celebrate that.
Well, as you saw, we had some environmental problems in Haifa. How would you recommend taking care of that?
Well, this has been a long-term problem with the petrochemical plants and other industry in Haifa, and it's not, obviously every situation is individual and sui generis, but it's not so different from the Houston Ship Channel, where I've known people who suffered serious adverse effects and died early as a result of the air pollution and the water pollution. And a friend of mine did a study of the Kishon years ago about the problem of your scuba divers, your SEALs, and their disease rates. And so Israel, the good thing is that Israel is addressing these problems. There's more to be done, but thank God I can see the whole government is mobilizing to make sure how serious the problem is and then to address it and correct it.
When you go back to Washington, Richard, what's going to be your message? My
message is going to be that Israel indeed is Or L'Goyim, a light to the nations in more ways than Americans know, in the environment, in health, in industry, and in their general well-being and happiness as a society, and in their sense of purpose. Even though Israel is a small nation, I say, no, it's not. It's a big family. So Israel pulls together against your adversaries, and I just think Israel's been a great success and a model for us.
Well, Richard Hellman of the Middle East Research Center, thanks for coming to Israel, and thanks for coming to the IBA News.
Thank you, REA. Great to be with you.
Police are expected to recommend closing the sexual harassment probe against former Likud Minister Silvan Shalom. This after none of the 13 women tied to the investigation agreed to file an official complaint against him. The case is expected to be examined by the state's prosecutor's office and is a decision made in the near future. In recent weeks, police attempted to convince some of the 13 women who alleged the former minister had sexually harassed them to file complaints, but they refused. In wake of the mounting allegations against him, Shalom resigned from his position as Interior Minister and Vice Prime Minister in December. Tragedy in Kiryat Ata. An 18-year-old girl died last night after apparently inhaling helium gas from a balloon that was left over from a birthday party last week. The girl's parents immediately called emergency services after she collapsed in her home. Paramedics discovered the girl unconscious and after performing several resuscitation attempts were forced to announce the child dead at the scene. The Health Ministry has issued an advisory calling on all women who visited South America to refrain from getting pregnant at least 1 month following their return. The latest recommendation is based on the assessment that for 4 weeks constitute enough time to make sure that a woman hasn't contracted the Zika virus, since the incubation time runs between 3 to 12 days. The ministry also raises the possibility that the virus, which causes birth defects, could be transmitted through sexual intercourse and not just through infected mosquito bites, which at first was believed to be the only means of transmission. Last month, a 2-year-old child who returned from Colombia was diagnosed as the first person in Israel to have been carrying the virus, and his condition is said to be fine. Stock Talk now. Share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up, and the shekel was down in foreign currency trading. Let's take a look at the late afternoon numbers. Taking a look at the weather, and we can expect another rise in temperatures tomorrow, and it will be unseasonably warmer conditions. Here are the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That's all for today. I'll be back again at this desk tomorrow to bring you the latest news from Israel. I'm Ari O'Sullivan. Thanks for watching, and shalom from Jerusalem.